Stop it. Stop it. I love these distractions. Hello, everyone. Oh, look at the view out of the window at the moment. It's so nice at the moment. What a beautiful day it is. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another episode. Yes, we are live. It is English Addict from the United Kingdom. You see, what was happening? Steve, at the moment, is outside doing some gardening, and he decided to start tapping and waving at the window from outside into my studio, and it was very distracting. That's all I can say. Hi, everybody. This is Mr. Duncan in England. How are you today? Are you okay? I hope so. Are you happy? I hope so. So here we are, just 3 days into 2020, and already we are on the verge of having a third world war. Isn't it great? What a super start to a new year. And of course, if World War III breaks out, I will be streaming it live right here on YouTube. So you won't miss a moment of it. So here we go then. It is 2020. Not only that, it is also Friday. I don't know what's going on at the moment. It seems the human race will never learn. Human beings will never learn, even though it's 2020. But to be honest with you, the universe doesn't care if it's 2020. Only we know that it's 2020. Only human beings have decided that this particular moment of time exists in the thing we call 2020. But to be honest with you, the universe doesn't care. The cosmos couldn't give a toss, to be honest. So here we go. I hope you are feeling good today. I'm not too bad. I'm just getting back to the normality, whatever that is. So life has been on hold for a few days whilst we had Christmas and then the new year arrived. So we are all just getting back to normal here in the UK. I don't know what's happening where you are because I'm not there, you see. So I hope you are well. We are now already at 10 minutes past 2. Wow. Was I really that late today? I can't believe how late I was arriving today. I'm sorry about that. By the way, you can catch me on YouTube on Sunday, Wednesday and Friday. 2 p.m. UK time is when you can catch me right here on YouTube. Sunday, Wednesday, Friday, 2 p.m. UK time. I will give you the times later on, just in case you missed them. So I hope you are feeling good. Have you had a grand day? Ooh, how grand has your day been? Has it been really grand or only a little grand? I think that's a word we don't use very often. You never hear people say grand anymore. So if something is large, extravagant, or maybe something is very beautiful to look at, it is large. So normally something that is of a large scale can be described as grand. But of course, also something that has been enjoyable and fun can be described as grand. We had a grand day the other day. Something amazing, something super duper. Of course, you can have a grandparent. So a grandparent, a grandmother, a grandfather. So we can use all of those words, and they all contain that super duper word, grand. Of course, grand can also mean 1,000 as a slang word. So you might say, my boss gave me a grand bonus last week. So that actually means £1,000. So when we talk about a grand, quite often we are saying 1,000, normally concerning money. So here we go. Let's have a look at the live chat. Whew, what a few days it has been. I don't know about you, but I always find Christmas and the New Year very exhausting. And of course, I was here with you on the 1st of January. We were doing a live stream. Now, Mr. Steve, as I mentioned earlier, Steve at the moment is outside doing some gardening. However, I have a feeling that Steve is not going to come on today. I think he's feeling a little bit shy, to be honest. You might not believe this. You might be completely surprised to find out that Steve is actually quite a shy person. I know it seems hard to believe. So, Mr. Steve, the shy person that he is, will not be joining us today. However, I am going to try and lure Mr. Steve. I am going to try to get him to come into the studio and join us on the live chat, because I have in my hand something that Mr. Steve loves. Can you see that? That is a chocolate finger. And I happen to know that Mr. Steve is a big fan of chocolate fingers. So on this beautiful porcelain plate, there is a chocolate finger. So this is what I will be tempting Steve with a little bit later on. So as soon as Steve gets the smell, as soon as he can smell that beautiful creamy chocolate, I think he will come into the studio and join us. I don't think he will be able to resist, to be honest. I think he will be in here like a shot as soon as he finds out that I've got his favourite snack right here. A lovely, fresh, creamy milk chocolate finger. Isn't that lovely? I will try my best not to drop it on the floor. So there it is. So we will try to do that later. We will try to tempt Mr. Steve into the studio. But I might need your help as well. So please send all of your positive thoughts to bring Mr. Steve here onto the live stream. Today we are talking about quite a few subjects. One in particular, public transport. Now this is something I want to talk about today, and I can safely say I have never talked about this before. It seems incredible. So this is actually a subject I've never discussed before, ever, which I find incredible because it's something we all use, something that most of us use at some point in our lives. Public transport, the means of getting around. So I know walking is good for you. I know that walking is very beneficial. It can keep you healthy for many, many years. It can extend your life. However, sometimes walking can be very tiring, especially if you have to travel a very long way. So quite often people will use public transport. They will get on public transport. So that is something we are talking about today. We will also be talking about different modes of transport. So can you see that there? Modes of transport. So when we say modes of transport, we are talking about types. So the different types of transport. And there are quite a few, in fact. Some of them have been around for a lot longer than you might realise. So modes of transport, public transport, we will be talking about today. However, we have something even more important to mention. We have the live chat. Hello, live chat. Are you okay? I hope so. So here we go. Live chat is up and running. Who is first on the live chat. Oh, let's have a look. Hello, Sassy Lira. Hello, Sassy Lira or Lera. I've not seen you before here on the live chat. Is it your first time? Can I say congratulations because you are first on today's live chat? I can't contain my excitement. I really can't. Hello also to Julie. Julie G is here as well. Sweetness. Hello, Mr. Duncan, and hi to everyone. Yes, it is Friday, the end of the week, although here in the UK it has been a very short week because yesterday everyone in the UK went back to work after the long Christmas break. So most people are now back at work here in the UK. A lot of very miserable people around the UK who are having to go back to work after their lovely long Christmas break. Lilia. Hello, Lilia. Nice to see you here again. Haven't seen you for a while. I hope you had a good Christmas. And I suppose I should say Happy New Year as well, because it is still the new year. We are just 3 days into 2020. So yes, I suppose I should say Happy New Year. I wonder how long you can actually say Happy New Year for before you have to stop saying it. So can I say Happy New Year on the 10th of January? Can I still say it? So when does it become too late to say Happy New Year? So can I say Happy New Year at the start of February? Can I? Is it strange? Is it silly? Will I get people chasing me down the road with large sticks? I don't know. Hello also to Tran. Luis Mendez. Luis Mendez, hello to you. A big bonjour to Paris and France. Belarusia, hello everyone. Hello Belarusia. I noticed today you are using your normal account on YouTube. Thank you very much. Also Eman. Also to TS, Nikorn, Krishna, Corey, and also Hankrai Brahma, who is watching in India. A big hello to India at the moment. So here we are now in 2020. How does it feel to be in 2020? As I mentioned the other day, it sounds like we are in some sort of science fiction film. 2020, the year that humanity made the giant leap forward. Or backwards. Who knows? It's still early days. Mirella, hello Mirella, Alamgia, also Angela. We have a lot of people already on the live chat. Thank you for joining me today. How lovely to see you here. Also Frederica, Caesar. Can I also say hello to Olga and also Petros for your lovely donations. So hello and thank you for your donations. You are more than welcome to make a donation, by the way. And of course, you can write to me and follow me on Facebook as well. So the big question is, will we be able to tempt? Will we be able to tempt Mr. Steve into the studio? I have his favourite snack here, a lovely chocolate finger. So I'm going to try and tempt Mr. Steve into the studio at around about 2:30. So we will see if we can get Mr. Steve to come in and join us, because he's feeling a little bit shy today. I don't know why. I have no idea. Maybe it's his time of the month or something like that. Who knows? Angela is watching in Italy. Mekarisi or Mekursi, hello to you watching in Algeria. Nice to see you as well. Also, Corrie, Lena is here. Hello, Mr. Duncan. Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. We are going to celebrate Christmas on the 7th of January, says Lena. Thank you also for your lovely donation as well today. Thank you very much. I received it this morning. Thanks a lot. I do appreciate your help because I do everything here for free. It costs you nothing. So on the 7th of January, some people will be celebrating Christmas. Those who don't follow the Gregorian calendar. Hello, Luciano. Hello also to Sylvia. Hello, Netra. Palmyra. Nice to see you here as well today. Wow, so many people are joining in. Now, I have my lovely cameras outside. I'm wondering if I can get a shot of the bird feeder. So there it is. There is the bird feeder that is in my front garden. And Mr. Steve was out there a few minutes ago disturbing the birds. But I think he's gone now. So it looks like Mr. Steve has gone back into the house. And the birds are now feeding in the front garden. So normally I show you the bird feeder in the back garden. But there you can see a live view right now, and you can see a blackbird lurking around in the background. Oh, he's gone. There's one thing I've noticed about blackbirds. They will often chase each other around. They are not very friendly to each other, the blackbirds. They don't seem to get along very well, especially the males. So male blackbirds will often fight, and they will often hold their territory very aggressively. Quite aggressive birds, blackbirds sometimes, especially during the mating season. So there it is outside at the moment, a lovely view, and also we have another view looking into the distance. You can see that the sun is out today. So we actually have sunshine at the moment. So there is a lot of sun around, blue sky, and it's not too cold here in the UK. It's about 9 degrees, which is still very warm for this time of year, to be honest. Live English. We're talking about public transport today. Public transport and also different modes of transport. Ways that we all get around. What about you? Do you ever use public transport? Do you ever go out and about using public transport? I will be honest with you. Here in the UK, public transport here in the UK doesn't have a very good reputation, especially trains, something we will be talking about later on. So we will mention that later. There are certain types of transport here in the UK that people are very dissatisfied with. They hate public transport here in the UK. Hello to Eman. Hello, Eman. Hello also to Cecilia and Nicorn. I think I've said hello to you already. Lilia says you are tapping into an amazing topic, Mr. Duncan, by sharing your stance on the nature of time. If a tree falls down in a forest and no one is around, can you say that the tree has fallen or not? Or does it make a sound? So this is a little bit like Schrodinger's cat that is in the box. So there is a way of looking at reality and the way that things happen around us. So if something happens but no one sees it, does it mean that it has happened? Is the cat alive in the box or dead? Who knows? It could be both. Hello also to Julie. Julie G again. Thanks for seeing me here today. Thanks for joining me. I always appreciate the fact that you join me. So I give up my time, but also you give up some of your time as well to watch me. Lewis says, In Paris, the public transport is very good. Well, I was in Paris last year in 2019. So I was in Paris, and I must be honest with you, I was very impressed with the public transport, especially the underground trains. Very good, very easy to get around. The underground trains in Paris, very impressive, I thought. And also not very expensive, which surprised me a lot. Because here in the UK, and this is something I'm talking about later, here in the UK, public transport, especially if you want to go by train, is very expensive. And every year, in January, every year, the train fares, so the charge for using the trains goes up. It goes up every year. Hello to Sudhir. Also, hello to Wilson. Wilson says in the country of Colombia, they use a donkey as a way of transportation or a means of transportation. So the means of transportation is the way you move around. Donkeys can go to the country by themselves, carrying heavy stuff. Yes, I've seen that. I've seen pictures of donkeys and horses. I believe they call them pack horses. So a pack horse is a horse that carries goods or maybe belongings, packages or suitcases on their backs. Pack horses. You are right, Lewis. Paris has a really good underground network, says Anna. Yes, I was very impressed, I must admit. And also, I suppose, another thing to mention generally is the amount of traffic that was in Paris moving around on the roads and how all of the traffic just merged together. So there didn't seem to be any real rules or control on the roads in Paris. So that's another thing that I noticed. In fact, in certain ways, it reminded me a little bit of China. So in China, the rules on the road are not exactly clear. And I had a feeling that they were very similar to that in Paris. I'm sure if I'm wrong, you will correct me. Hello also, Kelly. Hello, Corrie. Nice to see you here as well. So it is the 3rd of January, a brand new year. How has 2020 been for you so far? Has it been a good year? I know we are only 3 days into the new year, but you never know. Apparently a third world war is on its way, so that's a bit disappointing, isn't it, really? Hello also to Diego. Hello, Diego. Wilson, the donkeys are often seen in the towns. Is that a question or a statement? I'm not sure. Hello, Kelly, as well. Thanks, Kelly. Nice to see you as well. We have a lot of things to talk about today. Yes, there are always things to talk about. And welcome back, Blue Thunder. We haven't seen you for a very long time. I think you've been busy with your studies. So you've been busy with your studying and your exams. So it's nice to see Blue Thunder back with us again. So welcome back. Hello also to Sudhir. Transport has been improving over the years in Pakistan. So I'm always fascinated to find out what public transport is like in other countries. Here in the UK, as I mentioned earlier, our public transport doesn't have a very good reputation. Not very good at all. Especially one particular type of transport, which we will mention later. So, I suppose as we are now approaching 2:32 on a Friday afternoon, I'm going to try and see if I can get Mr. Steve to come into the studio, because he doesn't want to come in today. He doesn't want to appear at all. He said this morning, no, I'm not appearing today. I'm not going to. I'm too shy. And I thought, maybe there is a way of getting Mr. Steve to come back on. And I think I have the perfect plan. So here in my hand I have a plate. And on the plate there is a snack. And it just happens to be Mr. Steve's favourite snack. It is a chocolate finger. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start to move the chocolate finger around, and then hopefully the smell of the chocolate, the aroma of the milk chocolate will fill the air. But I also need your help as well. So can everybody out there in YouTube land please wish that Mr. Steve will smell, he will detect the smell of this lovely, beautiful confectionery. So after 3, we will start the process of luring Mr. Steve into the studio. So here we go. Let's try it. So I'm going to make the chocolate scent, the aroma of chocolate will now fill the air. Mr. Steve, is he coming? Has he detected the chocolate yet? Here we go. Now, be quiet, everyone. He's very shy. He's like a little timid animal. Gotcha.
Oh, no, Mr. Duncan.
I've got you. That's it.
You've caught
We've caught him, everyone. We've caught him. Is a little bit. Is struggling. Is struggling. That's it. Okay.
More chocolate. More chocolate.
You can have more chocolate later, Steve. Okay. Okay. Let me just try. I'm just trying.
Where?
I'm just trying to subdue Steve. Subdue him. Okay. I'm subdued. Are you subdued?
Oh, the taste of that chocolate, Mr. Duncan, it was just delicious. You know how I like it.
Are you?
No, I was going to be rude there, Mr. Duncan, but I won't say anything.
No, please.
Oh. Are we live, Mr. Duncan, to the world?
We are live. Now, I know you said this morning that you didn't want to come on, but I knew that you wouldn't be able to resist a chocolate finger. Steve is very partial to a chocolate finger, aren't you?
Well, yes, I do like them. They are my favourite. Well, that means we've got one less, because what we do, Mr. Duncan... Hello, everybody. By the way, this is quite unusual. I've been on 3 times, haven't I, Mr. Duncan?
This is amazing.
In the last, since Christmas.
Okay.
I'm all excited because I'm fired up, Mr. Duncan. It's a lovely day.
Well, we saw you in the garden. Well, I saw you in the garden. You were tapping on my window and you distracted me.
Filming me?
No, I didn't film you, but I did see you at the window and you were very distracting because I was trying to start my live stream and you kept waving to me and tapping on the window. And it really distracted me ever such a lot.
Well, I just thought I'm coming up the garden. I wanted to let Mr. Duncan know that I may come on to the live stream today if I was tempted. And sure enough, I was. So I thought I would just wave to you through the window. All you needed to have done is just like that, and I would have stopped.
Yes.
Just acknowledged my presence. Yes. I've been out in the garden, Mr. Duncan.
We noticed.
What, you mean you've been filming me in the garden?
No, I've already told you. I'm not filming you. I mentioned it.
Oh, right, okay.
I'm glad to see you're following this.
You mean you've been filming me in the garden, Mr. Duncan?
No, I haven't been filming.
Oh, no, yes, because it's a lovely day today, and I just thought I want to go outside there and tidy up a particular part of the garden, which always looks a bit messy. Now, Mr. Duncan viewers, he hates me. If he sees me getting out my loppers or the saw. He's always worried, what is Mr. Steve going to cut down in the garden?
I always wonder what Steve is going to do in the garden when he has his large tools in his hand.
Yes, because Mr. Duncan doesn't like me to cut back bushes. He's got a thing, he hates it. He likes them to go grow wild. But you have to, if anyone out there has a garden, you have to keep it under control. Otherwise it starts to look messy.
I do feel as if we've talked about this subject many times before.
We have, but I just thought I would well, we've got new viewers who don't know.
Yes, we have actually. Can I just say hello to a couple of new viewers? Motivation Treat. It is my first time to catch you live, and isn't it amazing? It certainly is, and welcome.
Luciano says...
Wait. Oh. You seem to have no idea what's happening.
I don't know. I never know what's happening.
Did you hear the applause?
Yes, I did.
I'm sure. You know what I think? I think Steve is going deaf.
Well, I've got these. Shall I take these off? Because I was in the garden, of course, so I'm a bit hot.
How many hats are you wearing?
I was getting very hot. It's surprisingly hot outside. I've cut back. Have you seen what I've been doing in the garden, Mr. Duncan?
I did notice. In fact, we were looking at the bird feeder because you were lurking around there earlier, but the birds have gone because you scared them away.
Oh, well, no. There were lots of... As I was clearing the garden, there were lots of robins coming along.
I saw the robin watching you.
He was watching me and he kept coming in because when you disturb the ground, particularly where there's leaves or old bits of wood, when you disturb the ground, of course, lots of insects are uncovered. And so the birds like to fly in, particularly the robins, who are very, very tame and unafraid of our presence.
Yes, I think robins are quite brave.
They are. They are not afraid when they see some. They'll come within a few feet of you. So they start to see all the insects that I'm uncovering, and in they go and pick them off and eat them.
I would describe the robin in one word: opportunist.
Yes.
I think that's a brilliant word. So robins, the bird, the little bird with the red breast, I would describe it as an opportunist. So when it sees the chance, when it sees an opportunity, it will take it. So I think that's why.
Grab it.
They will. They always hang around. So quite often in the UK, you will see robins watching the general public, especially in parks. And do you remember when we went to Wales and we actually got a robin to land on our hand? And we were feeding it, weren't we?
They're very tame.
It was amazing.
Robins are one of the few rare wild birds that are very tameable and will come very close to you if you've got food.
They can be tamed.
Whereas most wild birds will stay a long way away from you and fly off, but robins won't.
Yes, so I can tame robins, I can tame most animals, but sadly I can't tame Mr. Steve.
I'm feral.
He is a ferocious beast.
If you say somebody's feral, it means that they're sort of wild. They're not tamed.
Yes.
A feral beast is an animal that is not tame.
Oh.
It lives in the wild.
Apparently, Flower Espoir, hello to you, has changed her clothes, and unfortunately, I now have the flu. Get well soon, Flower Espoir. We are talking about something today, Steve. We are almost back to normal, but Mr. Steve is joining us because he's still on holiday. He's on holiday from work. So this is the last time you'll be with us for a while. Public transport we are talking about today. Now, my first question, I suppose, for Mr. Steve is, do you like public transport?
Public transport? Me, a man of my station and importance? Do you think I would be seen on public transport, Mr. Duncan?
Well, judging by your attitude, I would say no.
Well, no, I've never really travelled very much on public transport because, and it's the same with a lot of people in the UK, because there is a high proportion of car ownership in the UK, and people only tend to use public transport if it's easy to use. I mean, lots of people use public transport because, for example, if you live in big cities like London, Birmingham, Manchester, you can't really drive in because there's nowhere to park.
No.
There's congestion charges. So for a lot of people who live in big cities, they have to use public transport, trains, buses. But because my job involves, I don't have a place of work because I'm in sales, so my base is at home. So I have to travel to lots of different places during the day and different days to different places. Therefore, I have to use a car.
That's it. But I don't think your employer wouldn't expect you to do your job by catching buses.
But the salespeople that we have that live in London, we've got about 5 that live and work around the London area. Okay. They do use the buses, the tubes, because it's impossible to use the car because you can't get anywhere quickly and it's too expensive.
The big problem with London, and it's a very basic problem, London was built a very long time ago. So most of the streets, most of the roads in the centre of London are the same, exactly the same as they were when they were first created. And of course, London was created a long, long time ago. Most of the streets, most of the roads were created before the invention of the motor car, before the invention of most things that we take for granted nowadays. So most of the streets, or many of the streets in London, are narrow because they never thought that they would need to make them any wider. So they didn't need to be wide because they didn't have vehicles. They didn't have motor cars or lorries. And that's the reason why when you go to London, the first thing you will notice in London is many of the streets are very narrow. And that's because London was built with that same thing in mind. They thought, well, we don't need to make the roads very wide. As long as people can move up and down them, that's all it matters.
And of course, the population has increased dramatically over the last 100 years. So there are therefore lots more people. This is, of course, a problem all around the world, is congestion due to cars.
Yeah.
I think in this country we have, I think there's at least 100 million cars, something like that in the UK.
That's a lot.
And there's, about 60 million people. There's at least one for every person. And of course, in the UK, a lot of people will be living in countries that are much, much bigger than the UK because the UK is quite a small country.
Yes. Well, that's interesting. I don't want to talk about this too much because we have about 100 things to talk about today, around 100 things to talk about.
Well, I won't be here for all of it.
I've counted them. 100 things.
How many have you got through so far?
None. Public transport is something that we use quite often. What I was going to mention, Steve, last night they were talking about the Australian fires. So a state of emergency now in Australia where wildfires are occurring all over the place. But it was interesting that they showed the scale of Australia compared to the UK.
Yes.
And Australia is huge. It really is a huge country. Well, technically it's a continent. But the UK is tiny. It's so small compared with Australia.
Well, it's only that from the top of Scotland to the bottom of England, it's only about 600 miles.
Yeah.
What's that, about 1,000 kilometres?
Yeah. So most people don't actually appreciate just how small the UK is, but also how large other countries are, especially Australia. It's a huge place. It takes, to fly from one side of Australia to the other, Steve, takes hours.
Well, I know people that have gone on holiday to Australia thinking, we want to go to Australia on holiday. And the thing they always say is, I enjoyed it, but I spent most of the time travelling. Because to get to anywhere different in the UK, I mean, the width of the UK, for example, is only 300 miles. It's about 500 kilometres wide.
Yes.
And I said about 1,000 kilometres long, but you wouldn't ever go to the really top bit. So in reality, you're only working with an area of about 500 by 500 kilometres at the most that you would ever go to visit.
Yes, but the thing is, another thing worth mentioning is we hate travelling. British people, now this is, I can say this safely, there is one thing we hate doing, isn't there, Steve? British people, we hate travelling anywhere.
Well, we get easily upset if the journey is held up, and of course, because we're a small country with a lot of people. I mean, France, for example, has the same sort of population as us, but double the landmass at least. So people are spread out a lot more. So in the UK, there's a lot of people concentrated into a relatively small area.
We don't realise how spoilt we are here in the UK. We live on a very tiny island. It really is small.
And of course, the transport links that have been built are okay, but because they've been developed over a long period of time, they're not ideal.
Yes.
There are some, obviously some good public transport by train, but it's very difficult to I don't like travelling by train. I used to travel a lot by bus when I was. Are you going to go through the various types of?
We have a lot. We've got about 600 things to talk about.
Right. So we talked about the relative size of the UK to others. I mean, really, to get to anywhere major. I mean, for us to get to London, it only takes a couple of hours.
Yeah. Well, if you travel from Birmingham to London, it's about 1 hour and 40 minutes, 1.5 hours
between the two major cities in the UK.
Yes, that's quite a long distance as far as we're concerned.
Yes,
I'm sure for other people watching, it's nothing. But it's about 120 miles. But that's a long way for us. So 120 miles is like forever for British people because we hate travelling. And one of the most common forms of transport besides the car is the train. And people do not like travelling by train for various reasons. I suppose one of them is the actual infrastructure. I love that word, by the way.
Infrastructure.
The infrastructure. So everything that makes up that type of transport. So not just the trains, but also what the trains run on and how the trains run and where the trains stop at. So everything has to be built and created.
Stations, the tracks.
Yes. So everything has to be built and created. And it has to be maintained. And I think here in the UK, it hasn't been maintained very well. So a lot of our infrastructure, as far as the railway system is concerned, is not very good. We are way behind Europe.
In terms of public services, we don't put anywhere near as much money into our public services as the rest of Europe does.
I think a lot
less.
Yeah,
I think people would be surprised.
I think a lot of people would be surprised to hear that.
I think the highest amount of money that's spent on public services in Europe is Germany, and France, Italy and Spain are probably not far behind, but we're a long way behind because a larger proportion of the population in the UK own cars, but the state of the roads in the UK is very poor now.
Yes.
A lot poorer than it used to be because we've had, since the 2009 crash, we've been living in what they call austerity,
yes.
And they've cut a lot of public services significantly. The
spending.
The spending on public services has been cut back a lot, not just the transport, but health and everything, but we're getting into other areas.
Yeah.
But yes, compared to the rest of Europe, the spend is a lot lower in the UK.
Yes. So there has been very little money put in to all of the things that exist as far as transport is concerned. So I would imagine many people are surprised to hear that, because I suppose you would think that the UK, Great Britain, everything is fantastic, but we have, I would say we probably have one of the worst rail networks in the world.
Well, I wouldn't say in the world, but certainly in Europe.
Well, in Europe.
I mean, whenever I've been to France, Germany, the railway systems there seem to be a lot more reliable. There seem to be a lot more of them. We've cut back a lot of services, and in the 60s they cut back dramatically on the number of train journeys. And of course, really, the train is a lot more environmentally friendly than the roads. Somebody mentioned earlier about, do you have trams?
Well, this is something I'm talking about later. This is one of the 600,000 things we are mentioning today. So
I may have to go back in the garden, Mr. Duncan, because at some point I may have to leave you.
Okay.
Because I've left a lot of garden implements, tools out there, and lots of bushes need all chopping down.
Okay, so
putting into the bin.
So what I will do, Steve, I'll let you go.
Oh, no, I won't go now.
Oh, okay.
I'll stay for a bit longer.
We're not on for very
now.
You know we're not on for very long.
Okay then. Well, maybe I'll stay for all of it.
Public transport is something that we talk about a lot here in the UK, especially at this time of year, because normally the charges or the fare for using public transport always goes up in January. So this has become a tradition almost. So if you use public transport, normally you have to commute, Steve. Commute. I love this word. So to commute simply means to move around. You use maybe a certain form of transport to get from one place to another. You commute. So when we talk about a person who commutes, quite often they will need to travel maybe to their job. So maybe they live in, they live in Brighton, but they work in London. So every day they have to commute.
Or the other way round.
All the way from Brighton to London.
A lot of people don't want to live in the big cities. So a lot of people live just outside the cities, maybe 20, 30 miles out. And the further you live away from the city, generally, the cheaper the property is, because you can't have an average job and work in London and live in London because it's far too expensive. So most people will have to live outside the city in order to afford somewhere to live.
Yes.
And so therefore they have to do this daily commute.
They have no choice. They have to travel to work.
Probably the same bus, the same time, or the same train every day. It's not something. I mean, I've used to work in a hospital for 7 years, and I had to travel every day. Sometimes I'd cycle, sometimes I'd drive, and that gets very boring. The same journey, and a lot of people watching will relate to that. If you've got one place of work, it's the same journey. I don't remember. Sometimes you drive, you don't remember the journey.
I've been there, Steve. Remember, in the past, for many years, I used to have to travel by bus and train when I was working in certain places. I absolutely hated it. And the worst part is when everything goes wrong. And quite often, it does go wrong.
Sudhir wants your cap, by the way.
Sorry?
Sudhir wants your cap. He likes it.
Oh, I see.
She likes it.
Thank you very much. Travel. So you travel from one place to another. So the person that travels can be described as a commuter. So a person who moves around the country or maybe from one town to another because they have to get to work. And of course, at the end of the day, they have to come back home. They are a commuter. Many people now do travel long distances to get to work, especially around London, because living in London is very expensive. You may have heard that living in London is not a cheap thing to do. So many people now choose to live outside London in areas that are not so expensive to live in and where the property is a little bit more affordable. However, in London, very expensive. So more and more people now have become commuters. They are described, or each person is described as a commuter.
Are you a commuter?
I'm not.
Lily has just asked me what I used to do in the hospital, because I've mentioned it before. I used to work in the labs, in the laboratories.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of hospitals, when you go in, you need to have blood tests, and your doctor might send blood tests. And there was a big lab in the hospital, and we used to do all the testing on the blood to see if to see how ill you are.
Not very nice. So you were surrounded by blood.
I was. There was blood everywhere. Yes, we used to occasionally drop it. Blood, urine, anything that comes out of your body, we had to test.
Okay.
And I've got some interesting stories about that, but we won't go into it now.
We won't go into any of those stories. So a person who travels, quite often they will be a passenger. Passenger. So you might notice that the word pass is there. In fact, you will find that this word, or the beginning of this word, is used in a lot of things related to travel, including passport as well. So, passenger, a person who travels around, who has to move from one place to another. They normally have to sit in a car, a bus, train, taxi. In fact, there are many ways of travelling around, which we will look at in a little while. So when you travel, you will often have to go back and forth. You travel to a place, and then later, after you finish your job, Steve, you will return home. You will often go back and forth.
That means you're going back to the same, going to one destination, back again, and you keep going to the same place several times. If you say, I'm going back and forth all day, it means you've been going backwards and forwards, probably to the same place or somewhere near, constantly.
And I suppose it's worth mentioning as well, Steve, that not everyone works in an office or a place that's fixed. A lot of people also work on a basis of travelling around.
Like salespeople, like myself.
So Steve's job means that he has to travel all the time from place to place. So because sales is something that quite often involves moving around from location to location. So you will go back and forth. I think it's safe to say in your job, Steve, you do a lot of this. You go back and forth.
Yes.
If you want to travel, what do we normally have to pay? Well, quite often if you use public transport, you will have to pay a fare. And this is something that is in the news right now in the UK, isn't it?
It is, because particularly with the trains, if you are a person that has no alternative that you need to use public transport to get to work because there's no other way you can get there, then you're really at the mercy of the train operators because they know you've got to use the service.
Yes.
So they increase the costs, quite often way above inflation. And everybody moans. And as Mr. Duncan said, this happens every January.
Yeah.
The train companies put up their fares. They haven't put them up as much this year, but in the past they've sort of gone up 10, 15%
Yes.
in 1 year, which is way above the level of inflation.
Yes.
And travelling by train is very expensive in the UK, particularly if you don't plan your journey in advance.
Yeah, the shocking one, it's now more expensive to travel by train than plane.
It is, yeah.
That's incredible. So it's actually more expensive to get on a train and travel a long distance across the UK than it is to jump on a plane and take a flight. It's incredible. So years ago, the train was the thing that most people went to, and they would just jump on the train without thinking.
A lot of countries, the government subsidise public transport, which means that they pay something towards the fare so that the fares are cheaper for the passengers. But we don't have that in the UK. You have to pay whatever the full price is.
So when you get on some public transport, there are many types of public transport that you have to pay to use. You have to pay a fare. A fare.
Or ticket.
Yes. Here's another one. I suppose if you're driving along a road that has recently been built, and this also happens in many countries, doesn't it?
It does.
You might have to pay a toll, a charge to use the road.
Well, or a bridge. We've had tolls on bridges for many years in the UK, and certain bridges, the big bridges that cross certain rivers. But paying to go on a road in the UK has only recently happened. They built a bypass road around Birmingham, and that is a fare-paying road. You have to pay a toll to go on it. But I believe that's the only road in the UK that you have to pay.
Yes.
Whereas when you go to places like France, for example, you always have to pay, always have had to pay to go on the major routes, but not in the UK. So this is something that maybe is starting to happen more in the UK.
Yes. There are some motorways in the UK where you have to pay. So there are just one or two, not many, but there are bridges, as you said. Yes, bridges that they've spent millions and millions to build. They will have to go across a toll gate. Ayman El Hazara asks, is this live? Yes, it is. It is now 3 minutes past 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. Yes, it's Friday, and we are here on the third day of 2020.
Interesting little thing about tolls on bridges. There's one, I don't know which bridge it is, that goes across from England to Wales.
Okay.
And I think it's the Severn Bridge, but I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
They've actually just recently stopped the toll altogether, so it's now free to go across.
Oh.
But it's caused massive congestion problems.
Yes, because everyone wants to use it.
Because suddenly everyone's now using that instead of other routes. They're all going the direct route, which obviously if you've got a nice big bridge, that's going to be the easiest way to get from one area to the other, and it's causing all sorts of problems with local traffic.
Every time. If I had a choice between going all the way round and the other choice was going straight across a bridge, I would choose the bridge every time.
Luis Mendez is talking about trains in Paris, and of course we went to Paris, didn't we?
Yes, I mentioned this earlier. I
right.
talked all about this earlier in the live stream.
And didn't we have a nice experience? It was very easy to use the transport there. I found it very easy to use.
Very good, very good.
Yes.
Now, when you use public transport, you will often buy a ticket. There are different types of ticket that you can use, Steve. You can have a one-way ticket. A one-way ticket will take you in just one direction. So you travel from where you are to the place you want to go to, and that is it. You're not coming back. As far as you are aware, you are staying there forever.
Yes, maybe somebody's giving you a lift back.
Yes, or maybe you are moving to a place where you will be living from now on. You only need a one-way ticket.
Excuse me.
That was good. I think Steve's got the plague. Return. So if you plan to come back, you will get a return ticket. So that allows you to go away, stay somewhere, and then come back. So you will get a return ticket because you want to return to where you came from.
Maybe that return ticket is open-ended. So if you have an open-ended return ticket, that means that when you come back is much more flexible. You could go at maybe any time, as long as the particular mode of transport is available, or it could be restricted. So you might have to get a specific train or bus or plane at a certain time.
Yes.
So if it's open-ended return, obviously they cost more, but it means you can travel back whenever you like.
And this is one of the problems with travelling by train, because quite often, if you travel by train, you have to travel a long distance. So that is one of the reasons why people love travelling by train. However, when you travel makes a difference to how much you pay. So that is something to look out for. This is something I want to mention quickly because we are really, really short of time.
Okay.
If you go to London, by the way, if you are planning to go to London, and a lot of people are, I'm sure, maybe you are sitting there now thinking, I would love to travel to London to visit. you might use one of these.
Oh.
You might use an Oyster card, something that you use to travel around London. It is a very affordable ticket, and it allows you to travel during a certain period of time around a certain area. So they do vary in price depending on how far around London you plan to travel, and of course for how long you plan to do it for. So Oyster card is a great thing. Quite often you will buy a card and you will put it in the machine, and then you can use the machine. You can use the ticket all day, or maybe for a whole week, depending on which type of Oyster card you have. So this is actually a very good idea.
Does that cover you with all modes of transport?
As far as I know, yes, you can get different types. So the Oyster card will actually allow you to travel on train or on the tube around a certain area of London. So it depends which zone you are going to travel around.
So we call the underground in London, we call it the tube.
Tube.
But in most countries, they just refer to it as the underground. I'm sure that London was the first city in the world to have an underground transport system.
Yes, certain parts of the London Underground system are really old. I think Paris. Now, again, I might be wrong. I'm sure someone out there will be busy Googling. You like to Google, don't you? You can't stop your fingers from Googling. So I think Paris may have been the first one. I've got a very strange feeling.
Sure about that, Mr. Duncan?
I don't know why. London or Paris. It's one of those two. I'm almost 94.8% certain.
But certainly it goes back to Victorian. I'm sure that they first built it in 1880 or something like that.
Anyway, we don't know.
A long time ago.
Let's not make up dates. We don't know.
But it was certainly in the Victorian era.
Yes.
Now,
because public transport, Steve, is very popular, there is something that is a big problem with most public transport, especially here in the UK, and I suppose there are many other countries where this is a problem.
Overcrowding. Well, Mr. Duncan, my brother-in-law has to travel to London every day. Lives about 30, 40 miles from London. So quite often, my sister tells me that on the way back, that it's so overcrowded that he has to stand all the way back for maybe an hour and a half, doesn't have a seat, and that's very common. At certain times, there is literally nowhere to sit.
There are many people and not enough trains.
Yes, well, we're a small country, and of course they want to build this new railway line, don't they? The what's it called? H2 or something?
It's HS2.
HS2. They want to build this super fast railway.
HS means high speed. So at the moment we have one main line that goes from London to the north of England and also onwards into Scotland. But they want to create another railway line that will allow high-speed trains to go at very high speeds.
Because we don't have very high-speed trains in the UK. That's something else people might be surprised about, even though we did originally set some pretty impressive records for journeys on trains.
Yes.
Because our tracks are quite narrow, because we're a small country, and because of development, we can't have and there's lots of twists and turns.
Yes.
We can't have very fast trains in this country compared to France or Spain. Have got very high-speed railways, and Japan do, of course.
Japan has their bullet train. It goes at something like 220 miles an hour. Imagine that, sitting on a train, going almost as fast as a jet plane. That's incredible.
I don't think trains in the UK go much faster than about 70 miles an hour.
70
something like that.
We did experiment many years ago with different types of trains, but they all failed miserably. So we had this wonderful train that when it went round the corner, it would actually tilt over. It would do that. The Pendolino. I think they were called Pendolino trains. And they were an absolute disaster, because what happened is during the freezing conditions, they wouldn't tilt. so the trains couldn't travel very fast. So all of those trains were completely scrapped.
Oh, yes. So Netra N says, I've travelled to Eurostar London to Paris.
Okay.
Now, we haven't tried that yet. When we went to Paris earlier on this last year, we flew. But if you add up, but a few people that went at the same time as us went by Eurostar, and they said it was a very nice experience. The only trouble with Eurostar is that they often have strikes, and if there's any problems, you get severe hold-ups.
Yes.
It's a very, as a lot of you will know around the world, if there are certain workers who are trying to improve their working conditions or have a grievance with their employers, they'll go on strike at airports, at bus stations and railways, which causes severe disruption.
Yes.
They will use that as leverage to try and increase their pay or working conditions. But the people that suffer, of course, are the ordinary commuters.
The public.
The public.
But also it's worth remembering, and I think this is an even bigger one, Steve, Eurotunnel, it often breaks down. It's not 100% reliable. So I, between you and me, Steve, and you as well, I would not use the Eurostar. It is great when it works, but it's an absolute nightmare when it goes wrong.
Yes, Lewis says that there is a HS train from London to Paris, but when it gets when it crosses the Channel, I don't think it's high speed then, is it? I think it slows down once it comes from France across.
I don't know. I'm not an expert.
You're wrong there.
I don't know. Apparently, the London Underground was the first one.
No, I think it is.
Wait there, Steve. We're moving on. 155 years.
Yes.
London Underground, the first one. 155 years, apparently.
It could be high speed.
Cecilia, thank you.
Thank you for that. I think it could be high speed. I don't know if there is a specific line just for the Paris to London train. I don't know.
I don't think no.
It's certainly it doesn't stop in lots of places.
No, it goes from London.
Yes, I know, but I'm just wondering whether the bit from London to just before it goes under the Channel.
Yes.
Is high speed, or whether that just uses the ordinary network that was already there. I think it probably could be. Lewis could be right there.
Yes, we don't know though,
because we haven't been on it. Mind you, it's got to be, because you can put cars on the train. That was a big thing when we were growing up, when they built the tunnel under the Channel.
Amazing.
Between France and the UK. That was quite a big undertaking.
When it works very well. Otherwise, it doesn't. Here's another one. I just mentioned this, Steve.
Go on.
Delays. This is the one. This is the biggie. This is the one that everyone complains about, including this person standing next to me now. He gets so irate.
But I've got this fabulous new sat-nav in my car. Now this, if anyone drives and they think, should I get a sat-nav? You need to get one. I tell you, this one I've got in my car now, it tells me if there are any hold-ups on the roads anywhere.
Yes.
And a thing will come up on the dashboard and it will say hold-ups. And it will say alternative route found. Would you like to? And it will tell you, it saves you 10 minutes or sometimes like an hour. And so I don't know that there's this hold-up. And the sat-nav will say to me, do you want to follow this new route guidance? And it will take me all the way around it. Do you know, it saved me so much time, Mr. Duncan.
Satellite navigation systems are amazing.
They are, but you need one, particularly if you're living in somewhere like the UK where congestion on the roads is commonplace. Then you need one you definitely need one that knows. I don't know how it works, Mr. Duncan.
Well, I don't know either.
It must link into some information centre somewhere, and it will tell me, would you like delay discovered or something? Would you like to find alternative route? It's brilliant. Brilliant.
Yes. So satellite navigation systems can actually help you to avoid hold-ups.
Lewis likes the Eurostar.
Hold-ups, which means delays. So it's another way of expressing delay. you have a hold-up.
I think we'll try Eurostar, Mr. Duncan, next time we go to Paris.
I'm not.
The thing is, we live quite a long way from London. So, well, when I say a long way, relative, for us it is.
Yes.
So we've got to go to London first. So we've got to at least change trains twice to get there.
Yes.
And then we've got to there isn't an easy direct route from London where our train would go into Euston Station.
You have to change many times. You have to get
to the Eurostar one.
Yes.
And you've got to carry all your luggage with you and
No
everything.
way.
That's if you're already in London, it's fine. But if you're travelling to London, there's more complications to that. Whereas if you're just flying to Paris, we could just drive to the airport, park your car, get on the plane, and there you are.
That's it.
And then you need a taxi in.
It's too complicated.
I think for us it would
The
be.
more changes you have to make on your journey, the greater the chance of something going wrong.
Yes, and this is what we have. We have meetings, sales conferences and things like that at work that are in various locations. They always change the location. And I always drive because it's never, by the time you get on a train, you've got to get to our nearest station is at least 20 minutes away.
Yes.
Well, that means you've got to allow at least 10 minutes to get out of the car and get a ticket and everything. So you've probably got to allow 45 minutes before you even get on the first train. Then we've got to change in Birmingham. Then you've probably got to change somewhere else. And by the time you've done all that, you may as well just get in the car and drive.
It's just too much trouble.
It is, because we're not travelling massive distances.
If you're travelling somewhere and it's a long way away, keep it simple. That's it, isn't
Well,
it?
if you're living in a larger country where you've got to maybe travel 2-3 500 kilometres or somewhere like that, then yes, obviously you won't probably want to drive. But in the UK, the longest distance I'm ever going to have to drive is probably only about maybe 100 miles, maybe 150 kilometres, something like that. So quite often, just getting in the car is a lot quicker.
Well, that's what I mentioned earlier, but we are so spoilt here in the UK. We always think that if we have to drive for more than 50 minutes or an hour, it's like forever.
Hi, Lena.
However, in other countries, you might have to travel for 20 or 30 hours to get from one place to another. So we are really, really spoilt here in the UK. We are like spoilt children.
We moan about it, but
I have to drive for 25 minutes.
Sean Ferry says, I can't travel to London alone. I will be clueless. Well, yes. I mean, even for us, travelling to London's all right, but travelling around London using the Underground, it's a very complicated system.
Speak for yourself.
I think I would be daunted at the thought of having to use the London Underground, local buses and things like that. Even for us, we don't use... The last time I used the London Underground was probably 15 years ago.
Yes. I suppose you have to be in London to use it, I suppose.
So I would think I would be worried about using it myself, how to use it.
It's not London I have a problem with. It's the people in London, or some of them, that I have a problem with. When you go there, it's not a very nice experience. I have said this in the past. I am not a big fan of London. I love the architecture. I love the feeling of walking around London. I love the feeling of being by the River Thames and seeing all the lovely landmarks. However, some of the people, especially if you are using the underground system, they will push you out of the way. They are very rude and arrogant.
I think that's the same in a lot of cities, isn't it, with the underground, because everyone's rushing, trying to get to work.
Yeah, well, if they have an underground.
Most of the main cities around the world do now.
Yes.
And, of course, people are rushing around. Everyone's crammed into a tiny space. Nobody wants to be that close to people. And you've got problems about, where you're going to look. I
find London people, especially London commuters and people who live there, they kind of think they're better than other people. They think, I work in London. Do you ever see their Twitter accounts? They always put London. I work in London, as if somehow that makes them a much more...
If people says to us now, we live in London, we say, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, how dreadful. That must be awful for you.
So it's often used as a way of showing off.
It is. People in the UK, they probably do in other countries.
My son works in London. Look, I mentioned London. I said London. Ooh.
Sounds important. I wonder if that happens in other countries, where if somebody, for example, lives in France, and their son or their husband or relative lives in Paris, works in Paris.
Yes.
I would imagine that sounds like you've got, if you say you work in the capital city of a country,
yes,
then you must have a highfalutin job, a high-powered job. That's very important.
The one is saying that you work in New York. That's it. So if you live in the UK or anywhere around the world and you say, oh yes, I was in New York last week, so what?
Patrick travelled Paris to London with his bike.
Okay.
I was on the train. Eurostar accepts 2 bikes per train as luggage to check in. Well, how wonderful! Well, that's so. Were you travelling around London on your bike when you got to the UK?
Wow! I hope you had good insurance.
Oh, it's a very cheap way to travel. That sounds very good.
London is the worst place in the country to be a cyclist, to ride a bicycle around.
Lots of people do, but yes.
Yeah, a lot of people get squashed by buses. They get run over and killed. Not very nice. Palmyra says they are so ostentatious, aren't they, Mr. Duncan? Yes, you're right. They like to show off. They think they are superior just because they go to London to do their crappy job.
Oh, Mr. Duncan, don't be so disingenuous.
I'm being genuine. This is my real opinion.
But you can understand when people are young that they want the bright lights, they want the best jobs, they want to work. Because if you go and work in London, then in a top firm there, then you'll make lots of money, and then you can save up and get a job anywhere after that. And if you say you've worked in a big firm in a big city like London, Paris, New York, Frankfurt, then you've raised yourself up in your career, and therefore that makes you make more money. Makes you more employable.
It's just people showing off.
I don't think so.
Anyway, it's not a debate. We're not in the Houses of Parliament. Modes of transport. Here we go. We're going to try and get through these different ways of travelling around, Steve. Are you excited?
No, because I only use a car.
Tell me you're excited to see these modes of transport.
Yes, I am.
I can safely say that I've used most of these modes of transport in my life. So I have used them. The big question is, have you?
Oh, see, Tetra says here, you need to travel to crowded countries to know the difference. You would know how lucky you are. Well, that's it. That's what we were saying. People are always moaning in the UK about travelling.
It's true.
But actually, it's relative compared to some crowded countries like India, for example. Public transport there is it's a nightmare.
Yes. Well, I suppose India is a developing country. So, and of course, there are a lot of people, over a billion. A billion.
Yes.
In fact, I think it's more than that. Is it 1.2 or something?
Where's that?
India.
Yes, I think it is. Yes, I think so.
So I think India and China are almost level with each other with the size of the population. So you imagine trying to supply public transport
exactly
for 1 billion people.
And as you discovered when you were working in China, at certain times of the year, everybody has to travel back home, which we don't really have that. Was that at New Year, Chinese New Year, was it?
Well, it's normally also during the times when the schools close or the colleges close. So it's any public holiday. Travelling around China by train is horrendous. However, I would recommend that you do it. you try it at least once in your life, because it is an experience you will never forget.
Lewis says, Mr. Duncan, how about your electric bike?
I don't have one.
I know, but we spoke about it in previous live streams, and that's what Lewis is picking up on.
I don't have one. And I would like to have one, but I don't have one because they're very expensive. They're about £1,000 to buy. So, yeah. Modes of transport, Steve. Let's try and do this.
Right, because I need to get back out in the garden.
Well, you can go now if you want. It is actually. It's getting. No, it's not dark. What have I talking?
We've got about an hour.
No, you've just got. Look, the sun is out.
That's but you need to go for a walk.
That's the view. Well, I can go for a walk in the dark. My legs aren't solar powered. You know, they don't operate using the sun.
Well, you could go for your walk while I'm tidying up the garden.
Okay, then. So we will see you later, then, Steve.
Oh, am I going?
Well, you want to go in the garden while the sun is out.
How much longer are you going to be on, Mr. Duncan?
Not much longer.
Okay, so I'll let you do. Well, how much longer?
I don't.
Because if it's only 10 minutes, I'll stay on.
Well, this conversation about how much longer we're staying on for is actually making this live stream longer. So as long as we stand here talking about how long this live stream is going on for, this live stream will keep going on for longer and longer. We seem to be stuck in a time loop, going round and round in circles.
Got some very pretty pictures to show here,
yes,
Mr. Duncan.
which I'm hoping to show.
Right, I'll go then. I've got the feeling Mr. Duncan's trying to...
I'm not. You keep telling me you want to go.
I'm only joking.
You can stay here forever if you want.
Well, you're not going to be much longer.
No, hopefully.
So,
unless you stop talking about how much longer we are talking for.
How much longer are you going to be, Mr. Duncan? What do you say? 5, 10 minutes? How much? 15?
Make it stop.
Oh, I know how to push Mr. Duncan's buttons.
You are breaking my brain.
Right, ta-ta, everybody. And I don't know when I will see you all again.
No.
Because I'm back to work on Monday, which means that when Mr. Duncan is doing his live stream on Wednesday and Fridays, I won't be here. So I may be here on Sunday.
Yes, okay then.
I may be.
Ah.
So nice to see you all. Hope you've learnt something from my input today, and see you all soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mr. Steve. It's Mr. Steve. I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks, Steve. So Mr. Steve is someone who joins us now and again. Not always, but sometimes. So if you did see Mr. Steve today, you are very lucky. He is like a rare bird. You have to look behind a bush or maybe next to a tree, and you might see Mr. Steve lurking around. That's all I'm saying about that. So there are many different types of public transport. You can use a bus. Do you use a bus? I used to travel by bus a lot as a youngster and also in my early days of working. So I would use public transport. I would take the bus quite often. Not the best form of transport. Sometimes it can be very crowded. Sometimes you can have people on the bus who are very antisocial. Maybe they smoke, or maybe they cause trouble on the bus. Maybe someone will get on the bus without paying, and then there will be all sorts of problems. So travelling by bus can be quite unpleasant, not a very pleasant way to travel around. So the bus is not a great form of transport. However, it is very popular. So for short journeys, you will often use a bus. However, if you are going to take a long journey and you want to travel by road with lots of other people, you can take a coach. So a coach is a luxury bus. So maybe a bus that is more comfortable to travel on. So we have coach. So if you travel by coach, it means you travel in comfort. So it is like a very nice, posh bus, to be honest. We have mentioned this form of transport. Oh, Sudia says, I have learnt a lot about public transport. Bye. It's getting boring now. Thank you, Sadia. I am following you for more than 1 hour. Thank you, Sadia. Sadia says it's getting boring. Thanks a lot. That's really cheered me up. Thank you so much. Train. Who likes to travel by train? We have a terrible train system here in the UK. Underfunded, out of date. It needs a lot of money spending on it. So quite often, travelling by train over long distances can be a very nice thing to do. It depends how busy the train is. Maybe if you travel from Birmingham to London, it might take about 1.5 hours. However, if there are delays, then a train journey can take much longer, a lot longer. Hello to Palmyra. Hello also to Hamid. Hello Alamgir. Nice to see you here. Hopefully we have 160 million people living here in our small country, says Alamgir. Here in the UK, we have around 40 million. It's not very much. So the UK is actually quite a small country when you think about it. We don't have a large population, and the country itself is quite small. Here's an interesting form of transport. Now, this is a form of transport, a type of transport that people used many years ago, and then it disappeared here in the UK. Tram. Have you ever used a tram? Now, trams were very common in the UK a very long time ago. Over 100 years ago, you would see trams in the major cities around the country. And in the olden days, would you like to see some early trams? Now, these particular trams are in Edinburgh, or they were in Edinburgh. So there are some old-fashioned trams. They used to drive around the streets of all the major cities. In large cities such as London, Birmingham, and also in Edinburgh as well, you would see lots of trams. So the tram has actually made a revival here in the UK. So many cities now have trams. Again, they have come back. They have returned. So there you can see a modern tram. I think this particular tram is also in Edinburgh as well. So the tram is a modern form of transport. And of course, there are many countries that have used trams for many years. There is also an interesting form of transport called the trolleybus. Can you see it on your screen? A trolleybus. So this was a type of transport that was very useful. It is a bus that would connect to overhead power lines and it would drive along the roads. However, they weren't very safe or reliable. So we don't have trolleybuses anymore. So the trolleybus has actually gone. We don't have them anymore. We are now in the future. It is 2020. It's like a science fiction movie. Monorail. Do you have a monorail where you live, in your city or town? Monorails were a creation of the late 1950s and 1960s. These were tried in many parts of the world. Some of them failed and some of them succeeded. So here you can see, I think this is in Malaysia. So here is a monorail. It doesn't use fossil fuels, it uses electricity. And nowadays many monorails use solar panels or solar power. So things that are renewable energy is often used these days to power monorails. They use magnetic fields to move along. I suppose also it is worth mentioning a very common form of transport, the aeroplane. Aeroplanes, all different sizes. You can travel a short distance by plane. Very, very common now in the UK. Very common for people to travel by plane across short distances here in the UK. As I mentioned earlier, it's actually cheaper to travel by plane than it is by train, especially if you are travelling long distances in the UK. So an aeroplane can take you anywhere. It can take you all over the place. You might have your own private plane. Oh, look at that. I think that's a Cessna. So that is a Cessna light plane. Some people fly their own planes. They learn to fly and they fly around from town to town or city to city in their private planes. Ooh, very posh, very nice. Another form of transport that a lot of people use nowadays, however, they are quite unsafe when it comes to things going wrong. So if something goes wrong with this particular form of transport, you are in big trouble. Helicopter. So helicopters are very convenient. They are easy to fly. They are quite good for hopping between places. So maybe you have to travel from one town to another quickly and you want to avoid all of the traffic jams. You can use a helicopter. Helicopters, very useful. The problem is if they go wrong, you are in big trouble. This thing at the top, if that stops working, you just drop to the ground like a stone. So helicopters, very useful, very nice to jump in, very easy to get around in. However, if they go wrong, you are in trouble. Big trouble. It is not boring, Mr. Duncan. You are a great teacher. Thank you, Cecilia, for your vote of confidence. Thank you very much. That's very nice of you to say. Hello also to Ahmad. Monorails. There are a lot in Indonesia nowadays. Yes, it is interesting that in some countries the monorail has become a very common form of transport. I think Japan has its own monorail system. In fact, I think I have a photograph here. This is a photograph of a monorail in Japan. So this is actually a Japanese monorail. So there are monorail systems in many countries around the world. However, here in the UK, we don't really use monorails. They are quite expensive to operate and run. If you travel around, there is a good chance that you will use one of these. Ooh, very convenient, very easy to find. Well, normally they are very easy to find unless the place where you are travelling around is busy. Taxi cab. So this particular taxi is a New York taxi cab, very popular. Many tourists like to take pictures of the New York cabs. So quite often you will say taxi, or you can say cab, or you can say taxi cab. You catch a taxi. You try to catch a taxi. You will wave your hand to try and get the attention of the driver. You hail a taxi. So if you hail a taxi, it means you use your hand to get the attention of the taxi driver. You put your hand out because you want to get a taxi. Finally, shall we have a look at a London cab? So this is a London taxi cab, a London taxi. So we had a New York taxi. So this is what the taxis look like in London. They are black. Some of them are different colours, but this particular taxi cab in London is black, and they are very famous around the world. In fact, some people collect these. Wealthy people collect old London taxi cabs. Finally, before I go, we have one more thing to show you. It is possibly the most common form of transport around the world. No, not the motor car. The bicycle. Bikes are very popular. So the bicycle is something that a lot of people use to get around. If you live in a small village or a town and you don't want to travel very far, jumping on your bicycle is very convenient. So bicycles have become quite popular over the years. If you go to Amsterdam, you will see many bicycles. There are bicycles everywhere in Amsterdam. In fact, for a while, there were so many bicycles in Amsterdam, people had nowhere to put them. There was actually a crisis that was caused by the number of bicycles that existed in Amsterdam. So too many people were using bicycles and they had to park them somewhere, they had to leave them somewhere. And because there were so many bicycles being ridden around Amsterdam, there was actually a shortage of room to park them. Amazing. There are some forms of transport that I've forgotten to mention. We also have, the boat. Of course, boats are useful if there is lots of water around you. If you live in Venice, you will find that a boat is a very useful thing to have. Also, I suppose we should mention hot air balloons as well. You don't see many people flying around in balloons anymore, to be honest. However, it is still a very interesting pastime. Some people do like to travel around, fly around in hot air balloons. To be honest with you, I don't think I would trust. I would not trust a hot air balloon. For the same reason, I wouldn't trust a helicopter. Because if they go wrong, they fall from the sky. They drop like a rock. Rosa is here. Hello, Mr. Duncan. I am late, but hello anyway. Thank you, Rosa. Also, Pradeep and Lewis and Corrie. Pedro. Oh, hello, Pedro. Pedro Belmont is here as well. So we've talked about a very big subject today. Lots of new words. I hope today's lesson has been useful to you. I will be back with you on Sunday. So the next live stream will be on Sunday. I will be with you from 2 p.m. UK time. We would appear to have a lot of new people joining at the moment. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining today. If you want to get in touch, if you want to follow me on Facebook, you are more than welcome to do so. You can also send a donation to help my work continue forever and ever and ever. So that is how you get in touch with me. If you want to get in touch, you are more than welcome to do so. Oh, hello to Beatrice. Hi, Beatrice. Thank you for your lovely message congratulating me on my live class, and it has been very interesting. Thank you very much for that. I am quite pleased to see you here today. We are into 2020, lots of things coming up from myself over this year. Some of you have been asking about my new website. There is a new website that I am currently creating, and as soon as it's ready to go public, I will let you know. So that is something that is coming up this year. Mr. Steve might be with us on Sunday. We will see what happens. Thank you also to Noemi. Bye-bye, Mr. Duncan. You are not boring. Thank you very much. I know some people think this isn't exciting. I apologise, but I do try my best every time. Himashu says, oh, I've missed the live stream. I am late. Don't forget, I am with you 2 p.m. UK time. So maybe now you can write it down. Mr. Duncan's live stream, 2 p.m. UK time. It is always the same time. Thank you, Lewis. Thank you also to Corrie again. Sweetness Mitra. I really enjoyed your live stream and I enjoyed listening to it and also shadowing you as well. A lot of people do like to do that. They will shadow a person who is using a certain language. In my case, it is English. So to shadow someone is to follow what they are saying, and quite often you will repeat what they are saying as well. So shadowing is a very good way of practicing your listening and also your spoken English at the same time. A very useful thing indeed. Thank you, Palmyra. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Corrie. Thank you very much. Thank you, Alcare. You are fantastic. Thank you for your time and have a good evening. Yes, I am going for a walk in a moment because one of my New Year resolutions is to get more exercise. So as soon as I finish this live stream, as soon as I go, I will be going out to take a walk. Thank you very much for your lovely, lovely messages. And of course, thank you for your company today. I do appreciate it very much. Don't forget also, I suppose I should mention, like and subscribe. If you like what you see, then give me a thumbs up. And also, if you want to subscribe, you are more than welcome to do that as well. It's time to go. Thank you, Beatrice. Thank you, Sweetness. Thank you, Netra. Thank you, Zuzuki or Zuzuka. Thank you very much. Mr. Steve might be here on Sunday. I'm not sure yet. I might have to tempt him with another piece of chocolate. And of course, until the next time we meet here on YouTube, this is Mr. Duncan in the birthplace of the English language saying thanks for watching. And of course, until Sunday at 2 p.m. UK time, you know what's coming next. Ta-ta for now.